For a while there, it really felt like Americans were slowly but surely getting a better handle on their money. But a couple of major new studies are painting a much more worrying picture. It seems that after a decade of progress, the financial stability for millions of people is starting to show some serious cracks. So let's dig in and break down what's really happening and, more importantly, why.
All right, so first, let's just look at the big picture. The data is showing a pretty surprising and honestly a concerning reversal in how Americans are managing their day-to-day finances.
And this chart, wow, this really tells the story. Just back in 2021, more than half of us, 54%, said they had no trouble at all covering their monthly bills. Pretty good, right? Well, fast forward to today, and that number has plummeted to just 44%. That's a huge drop, and it's the first time in over a decade that we've seen a significant increase in the number of people struggling to pay their bills.
And this isn't just about feeling a little bit of a pinch at the end of the month. We're now seeing a record-breaking 26% of adults, that's more than 1 in 4, who are consistently spending more money than they actually earn. That is the highest level ever recorded in this study. It's a really clear sign that a lot of households are falling behind.
So, of course, all these numbers have a real human cost, right? It's about how we feel about our lives. And it's no surprise that financial satisfaction has just taken a nosedive. The number of people who actually feel satisfied with their financial situation dropped from about a third of the country down to less than a quarter. That reflects a growing sense of anxiety and unease that a lot of people are feeling right now.
So this all leads to the big question: why? Why is this happening right now? Now, inflation is definitely part of the story. But another huge report points to a much deeper, more persistent problem, and that is a nationwide gap in our financial knowledge.
Now, what's really fascinating about this slide is that absolutely nothing has changed, and that is exactly the problem. The average American can correctly answer only about 49% of basic financial literacy questions, and that is the exact same score as it was back in 2017. Think about it. Our economy has gotten way more complex, but our collective financial knowledge, it's been completely stagnant.
And let's break that down a bit. We do okay, not great, but okay with the basics of borrowing money. But as you can see, as the topics get more complex, like investing or insurance, our scores just keep dropping. And our biggest blind spot by far, understanding financial risk. We score a dismal 36% on that. In a world that feels more and more uncertain, that is a huge critical weakness.
Okay, so we have this knowledge gap. So what? What does that actually mean for people in the real world? Well, the consequences are tangible, they're severe, and you can see how this lack of knowledge builds into real, genuine financial hardship.
The data draws a straight, unavoidable line here. First up, adults who have very low financial literacy are twice as likely to be debt-constrained. That basically means their debts are so high they have no room to breathe or deal with anything else financially.
Then it gets worse. They are 3 times more likely to be what's called financially fragile. That's a specific term that means if they were hit with a $2,000 emergency bill, they are certain they could not come up with the money. I mean, just think about that. A single major car repair or an unexpected medical bill could push them right over the edge.
And finally, this statistic is just staggering. They are 5 times more likely to not even have a single month of emergency savings put away. We're not talking about thriving here. We're talking about pure survival. And millions of people lack even that most basic financial safety net.
And the cost isn't just about money. It's mental. It's about our well-being. People with very low financial literacy spend on average 10 hours every single week just worrying about their finances. Compare that to 4 hours for folks with high literacy. That's an enormous amount of time and mental energy just consumed by financial anxiety. And it's really important to understand that this isn't a problem that hits everyone the same way. When you dig into the data, you find these deep and persistent gaps across different demographic groups.
For starters, there's a stubborn gender gap. On average, men correctly answer about 53% of the questions, while women score around 45%. And you can see here where that gap is the widest, in investing. There's a 15-point difference, which has massive long-term implications for building wealth over a lifetime.
We also see a really clear trend when we look at different generations. It kind of makes sense, right? Financial knowledge generally goes up with age and experience. But what's really alarming here is the score for Gen Z, just 38%. They are just starting out, and they're entering one of the most complex financial landscapes in history with the least amount of preparation.
The data also makes it clear that there are significant racial and ethnic gaps. The average scores for Black and Hispanic Americans are 38 and 39%. That's quite a bit lower than the scores for white Americans and Asian Americans.
And what the research points out is that these differences are still there, even after you account for other factors like income or educational levels. All right, so that's the diagnosis. We've seen the problem, we've looked at the causes, and we see who it's hitting the hardest. So the big question now is, where do we go from here? Let's look at the challenges coming up and what the experts think might be the path forward.
So researchers are starting to highlight this new, really critical concept they're calling retirement fluency. This isn't just about general money smarts. This is the specific, specialized knowledge you need to successfully navigate retirement. Things like understanding Social Security, how Medicare works, and how to make sure your money lasts for your entire life.
And when you look at the numbers, boy, are we unprepared. Fewer than a quarter of adults actually understand how likely it is that they'll need long-term care. Only about a quarter know what Medicare really covers. We are heading towards the single biggest financial transition of our lives, and we're doing it largely in the dark.
So what do we do about all this? Well, the TIIA report offers 3 really clear recommendations. First, start early. We need to promote financial education for young people while they're still in school. Second, we need to design targeted programs for the specific groups that need the most help. And third, we have to focus our efforts on our biggest weakness, improving how we all understand and manage financial risk.
Which really brings us to a final, crucial question. The evidence is just crystal clear. What you know about money has a direct impact on your quality of life. So, as we look to try and reverse this really troubling trend, we have to ask ourselves, what is the single most important